Hello and welcome to Earth Day 2021. You are on our virtual stage and festival with Earth Day Initiative and March for Science, New York City. It is the 51st year of Earth Day. It's older than me. And I'm so excited to be interviewing Kai today, who will show you some of his incredible, mind-blowing work. And I'm going to launch right in and say your company, Big, talks a lot about social infrastructure. And let's just start with, like, what does that even mean?
Hi, Alysa, and also congratulations to Earth Day. We actually see social infrastructure as something that infrastructure is all around us. It's the roadways, the bridges, it's the energy systems, and oftentimes these are kind of afterthoughts, or they're kind of gray lines in a map, gray areas, and they don't really bring and sort of intertwine with the society, with our lives. And we look at infrastructure as really something that we can actually create an amenity to our daily lives to increase the quality of life. So when we think of a power plant, we actually imagine a place that you would actually want in your backyard, and we put a ski slope on top of it so you can ski down the power plant and it becomes a part of your daily life. We see the same for bridges and for flood management systems. So that's kind of our thinking, how to bring infrastructure into your daily life.
I am so glad you mentioned flood management, because I saw your pictures of the flood management infrastructure as rewilding of Manhattan's coastline, which looks amazing. Like, I can't wait for everybody to see that. Do you want to share some of the proposed projects your team has put together that illustrate this, like, more positive idea of the future?
Of course. So I'll just share my screen here and get going. So one of the things that certainly the time that we're living through right now, COVID is teaching us, is that, you know, there have been moments in history where there have been these same sort of shocks to the system. Cholera was a very sort of global pandemic, and it was then also the advent of many cities looking at their sort of waste management systems and really upgrading that. Go ahead.
I will just jump in. And for those of you who don't know, before cholera, not the book Love in the Age of Cholera, which I loved, but yes. Before cholera, like, people would just throw their wastewater of all kinds out the window, right? And that's correct. Part of the impetus for our modern sewer systems, like that correct. horrific, I guess, global pandemic, similar to this moment, led to the brilliance of the sewer system. Please go on.
That's the same sort of, overcrowding actually led to many of our parks. Central Park is really an outcome of sort of the dense urban life of lower Manhattan and the Lower East Side. 9/11, of course, made us rethink a city in terms of security. Sandy, the storm that also came through New York, is what led to the Big U, which is what you were just asking about. And when Sandy came through, it knocked out the power to lower half of the city, and it caused a lot of damage. And so out of that came a sort of resilience and looking at how we can integrate the flood management system through talking to the citizens that were actually affected. Over 200,000 people were made homeless. And we have now created a park system that wraps around 2.5 miles of Manhattan's coastline that basically protects against these sea surges or flood events. And this is, again, one way that a infrastructure, flood management, can actually lead to something that everyone can enjoy, even when the floods are not there. And the same, we looked at the Brooklyn Bridge, and back when it was built, there were 425,000 people going across that bridge every day. Today, we think we're always advancing, but now it's actually 160,000 because everyone's sitting in their cars and it's in gridlock. So we imagined a sort of a reimagining, a remapping of the bridge to back to a pedestrian-friendly, a bike-friendly, a sort of autonomous vehicle-friendly, to actually double the traffic across the bridge and to make it now not a bottleneck, but actually a really integrated part of connecting New York City. And then reimagining that every other bridge along the East River could start to bring and reattach those different forms of transportation across.
I love that for so many reasons. A, because we're obviously using less cars and hence less, as it stands today, gas. But additionally, like when you talk about the health of the planet, we're also talking about the health of humans.
Absolutely.
And as we're exercising more and using our bodies more to walk and bike, and it only helps all of us individually more as well, both physically, but I think emotionally. I personally, as I walk through the city, as I bike through the city, because of COVID, I stopped taking the subway as I brought my daughter to school. And it's become this point of joy every day.
There's so many good side effects. And this kind of rediscovery of the public realm is actually one of the outcomes that we see coming out of COVID. And it's not only here in New York. Paris has now talked about actually remapping the center of Paris and pedestrianizing it, creating wonderful kind of green arterials that sort of lace through the city. Barcelona, one of my favorite cities, is actually turning 50% of the streets into pedestrian and bike-friendly streets so that it's a grid of green versus a grid of black asphalt. And it's really creating a much more public realm in the city. One of our latest projects is also this energy plant, which is in Copenhagen called Copenhill, and it has a ski slope grafted to the top of it. It functions as a power plant, but it actually becomes an amenity for the entire city to enjoy. And this is a kind of thinking about this idea of social infrastructure. And sort of finally, just as sea levels rise, we see a lot of different kind of attitudes of how people live in these kind of settlements where there's a lot of water. And we've come up with this amphibious architecture that actually floats. So this is a student dormitory. It was built in a shipyard, brought over to Copenhagen, and you sleep right with views on the water, and you create a community. And this literally is rising up and down as the sea levels rise or lower in the future. And this was then also conceived on a much larger scale. This is 10,000 people living in amphibious sort of future where, climate refugees is actually something that we have to think about. As the seas rise, there will be more and more people that will be put into difficulties. So a lot of these ideas are in one of our latest publications called Form Giving.
So amazing. So amazing. When I was looking at the ski slope, I was like, but can we harness the power that the skiers get? Do you know? I'm like,
yeah. We actually, at one point, we had little power bricks where you could sort of step on the power bricks, and by the sort of movement and stepping onto those bricks, you would actually start to affect the power.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So
power of the people.
Exactly. In a perfect world where you could wave a magic wand and create the public spaces and buildings you'd like to create, what would that look like? What would change on day one?
I think it's something that we call urban prototyping. It's something that we could literally start tomorrow. We could start, at small scales to reimagine what the Brooklyn Bridge could be. And On weekends, you could start to shut down certain lanes of traffic and open them up to the people actually walking across the bridge. And it's very simple things that you could actually do to then allow people to actually see that future and then take the steps towards making it a reality.
I love it. That's very one step at a time, both literally and figuratively. Uh, when I think about projects like this, I don't know if you're familiar with Plus Pool, but that's something that I've been involved with since their origin, and I've been supporting them, and I think it's actually gonna happen soon.
It has to happen.
Exciting.
Alicia, it has to happen. And the project right behind me here is also along the Williamsburg waterfront, and it's creating sort of a softer coastal edge called River Ring. And it's really that we all could actually start to reimagine what that coastline could be. Here, it's a beach that would reintroduce people to the water's edge. We've been away from the water for over 100 years, and the Plus Pool and River Ring and many projects like it are a way to reconnect New Yorkers to the waterfront.
And it's so special. I've swam in the East River, and I've swam around Coney Island, and when I was growing up, I didn't even imagine that would be possible. So it's so exciting to think about swimming in River Ring and in Plus Pool. And just to wrap up, what would you say that people can do on a daily basis to engage in these ideas in their own lives and own communities? And what's like a concrete action that they could take today?
I think it's all about engaging with the spaces around them. And, we all can see the city is changing. New York in the 60s was a working waterfront. And, thinking about the Hudson River Park, the Battery Park, and even Governor's Island, those were moonshots. It seemed almost unreachable, and they are now fathomable. They are done. So really, it's about stepping on the shoulders of today and imagining what we would like to see in the future, because really anything is possible.
I love that you ended with that. And I'll just end by saying, for me, it's about engaging within your community wherever you live on a very personal level. So for example, I live in Harlem. We have a bunch of community gardens on our block, making sure that we compost. How do we engage our community around those parks? And how do we re-envision what we want in those parks? And it's really, really exciting, and it's really easy. And I think one of the things this past year and these past 4 years for some of us have shown us is the importance of local community organization, and that we cannot pretend that our governments will do it for us. It's something we have to do for ourselves on a daily basis. So on that note, it has been such a pleasure chatting with you. I wish we had like hours and hours and hours, but hopefully we'll get to meet in person soon. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you, Alysa.